Jedi form Rebel Alliance. Led by Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi have trained a band of rebels to fight the Separatists on the planet Onderon. With the help of the Jedi, the rebels escaped capture and infiltrated the heavily fortified city of Isis. Now our heroes have launched an armed campaign to subvert the Separatist occupation of the planet. The Jedi Council continue to observe and advise as the rebels strive to gain momentum against the Separatist forces. Despite the absence of civilian casualties, public fear has ensued as reports of the rebels' daring strikes circulate throughout the city.
Greetings once again, Bucketheads. Mayvar Tigar. Welcome to the 157th Intrepid Insurgents Interfering episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent, yet awesome Star Wars podcast. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, on social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. How is everyone doing? Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars Rewatch. Monday, maybe Friday. I don't know. I'm banking so many episodes I've completely lost track of what day this will be out on. But rest assured, it will be out. That's the good news. That is the great news. So how is everyone doing? We are in the second part of our Onderon arc. Onderon, as they probably more correctly pronounce it on the show. I've been saying Onderon since I was like 13 years old and I was reading it in the comic books. So I'm, going back and rewatching this is like, oh yeah, I've been saying it this way for a while. But potato, right? Who knows? It's a Star Wars word. I could probably get away with saying it as the whatever way I want to. Gosh darn it. Well, we'll see if any of you guys call me out about that. Well, like I said, we are here for the second episode. We know we're charting the growth of Saw Gerrera. We're seeing, by the end of this episode, we're seeing Ahsoka kind of on her own, overseeing the training and how the insurgents are running their, war against the separatist-controlled government of Onderon within the walled city of Isis. And this episode is really good in a lot of senses because we get to spend some time, again, if you're a Star Wars fan, if you're new to watching the Clone Wars, and like let's say you've seen Rogue One, but you hadn't watched the Clone Wars yet, and you're going back now and you're rewatching, maybe you thought like, oh, Saw Gerrera, like we're gonna see him, he's gonna be like the leader of this insurgency and liberate his planet. And what we find is a Saw Gerrera that's not ready for the role of leadership just yet. He's got a lot to learn. It's his sister Steela that is sort of the one who takes control, inspires the troops, inspires the people of Onderon, of Isis, to fight against the separatist-controlled government. And I think it's a good lesson for Saw, because Saw at this point, he's a very capable fighter. Very, very good at the martial, the combat. I guess we'll just leave it at combat. I was trying to spin a big fancy word, but I'm going to let it go. But yeah, he's a really, really good soldier, but he doesn't quite have the skills to be a leader just yet. He's got to learn those. He's still very impulsive, very brash, probably cocky and arrogant as well. And that doesn't exactly inspire a lot of people very, very often. And it's something he has to learn, is to sort of check his hubris a little bit. And that's what we kind of see throughout this arc, particularly by the end, as the insurgency, pays a very steep price. Spoiler alert for a show that's over 10 years old. but again, it's pivotal to Saw's development as a leader in the future. And again, I like it a lot too for Ahsoka, kind of being put in a position here where she's overseeing this, where she's kind of has to supervise them, make sure they stay on track, stay on target, don't cross any lines, don't do anything silly, stupid, get themselves caught, or expose any potential connections to the Republic. And at the same time, she has to balance her feelings out, because she's got a little bit of a situation going on. She has feelings for Lux Bonteri, but she can't express them. She can't reciprocate whatever feelings he might have for her. And he's watching this relationship between Lux and Stila Guerrera blossom in front of her eyes, and she has to sort of deal with that and kind of let it happen. But she's young and learning, and it's not always the easiest thing to do to let someone go in that regard. But that's part of Ahsoka's journey, and we'll talk more about her attachments and her being able to let go of those attachments as we sort of progress through this. So this is Season 5, Episode 3, Frontrunners. Original air date October 13th, 2012. The plot this week: the Jedi and Rex return to Coruscant and leave Ahsoka in charge of supervising the Onderon rebels as they carry out a series of strikes in the capital. Our cast this week... Oh, hold on. I jumped ahead. Our director this week is Seward Lee. This episode written once again by Chris Collins. And our cast this week: Andrew Koshino is Saw Gerrera. Dawn Lane Gardner is Stila Guerrera. Jason Spacek returns as Lux Bonteri. Ashley Eckstein, the great Ashley Eckstein, is Ahsoka Tano. Kirk Thornton is King Sanjay Rash. Matt Lanter is Anakin Skywalker. James Arnold Taylor is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Matthew Wood is the battle droids. Barry Dennen is Ramses Dendup, the old king that we'll meet in this episode, the one that has inspired the Guerreras to start this insurgency. D. Bradley Baker is Captain Rex. Nika Futterman has a role in this episode as Dono, Citizen, and Rebel. So she's working hard in this one. Corey Burton is Count Dooku, and Tom Kane is our narrator. And let's just get into it. Let's just start it up. Our Jedi fortune cookie for the week: to seek something is to believe in its possibility, and then that is a free Onderon for the rebels. And it might be a little bit deeper than that. We'll have to check it out as we watch and review the episode. But I don't see why we can't just get into this right now, why we can't just dive in. When we started the Onderon arc on the last episode, I gave a lot of background material, my personal history with Onderon and talking about Saw Gerrera and all these other things. And it was a long, rambly preamble. Let's just dive into it. Let's get into this episode. Let's dive in. Let's have some fun. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Dendup has been summoned and awaits your order, my lord.
What about the terrorists?
They've attacked a checkpoint near the canal and 2 droid patrols. One in Malgan Market.
If they think destroying a few droids is going to affect change, they've run a fool's errand.
One more thing, my lord. The royal carriage was ambushed soon after it left the residence.
An attempt on my life.
It appears that way.
So that was the new pro-separatist king. That was Sanjay Rash. And he now sits on the throne, pretty much installed by the separatists, I think it's fair to say at this point. And we're about to hear from his predecessor, the one who's inspired the rebellion to begin with, the one who they feel is the true king of Onderon, and that would be Ramses Dendup. So let's go ahead and check in with him and see how he feels about reports of this incursion and sort of the idea that Rash has that he's somehow controlling it, even though he's been pretty much sequestered in the royal palace here on Onderon.
You surprise me. Engaging with extremists is beneath you. Do you really want your crown back that badly?
I only want freedom for my people.
Your supporters are responsible for terrorist acts against the kingdom and our allies.
I didn't know that. You've made it quite impossible to stay informed of anything outside my prison chamber.
Call off the attacks.
I cannot call off what I did not dictate. What you're up against is simply the will of the people. It's up to the king to embrace, bend, or break it. And I am no longer the king.
Stop the attacks, or you will atone with your life!
It is you that must end the attacks by ending the droid occupation.
All right, so we know how they feel about that situation here, the old king. And we'll hear more about what led to his sort of downfall. I believe is in the next episode of the show, where we'll get a little bit more information on why he's no longer the king, and how Rash seems to have taken kind of control, probably with the aid of Dooku. Another one of those situations where Dooku installs a leadership that's pro-separatist, pro-droid army. But we'll get a little bit more background on the situation on Onderon and how this kind of came to be. I want to backtrack to the very beginning of the episode because this episode has a very unique introduction. As the action kind of begins as the narration is still unfolding. We're seeing Lux, and we're seeing Stila, and we're seeing Saw Gerrera, and Ahsoka's in the mix too as an observer, and they're getting ready to lay out an attack, and we're kind of witnessing that as Tom Kane's narration is unfolding. So that as soon as it's done, it begins a pretty big action sequence to open the show as the rebels destroy, a couple of droid patrols, and we'll play the clip of what Ahsoka tells to the Jedi Council and how she views the situation. But we see it on the face of the people of Onderon, in the city of Isis, that they're still, afraid. They don't know. They don't quite trust the rebels just yet. They're worried that in their quest to sort of liberate the city and the planet from the droid army, that eventually their lives will be forfeit in the crossfire of this battle. So they haven't quite embraced the rebellion just yet. But this episode does a lot to sort of shift that, and we'll see that more in the third episode of the arc too. Another thing I want to go back to before we really kind of get our teeth into this episode is I was thinking more and more about the situation, and this arc does have some strong similarities to what we saw from the Jedi in The Phantom Menace, where the inner politics of Naboo were something that the Jedi really couldn't interfere with. Now, that was sort of an interesting situation because, again, they were it was an illegal occupation, but I guess the Jedi felt bound by that treaty that quote unquote legitimate treaty that the Trade Federation came up with to sort of stay out of the internal politics, and they only really got involved in the battle to protect the Queen Amidala. And to engage the Sith, who at that point they were suspecting to be involved in this again illegal occupation of Naboo. They had something to do with it because, again, they were being hunted by Sith on Tatooine. So that was sort of their role here in Naboo. And in this episode, it's sort of like the same thing. They're staying out of the internal politics, but they're supporting the rebellion in a different way than they did on Naboo. They're training their army and they're assisting, and that is sort of like the big distinction between the two. But yeah, when it comes to the internal politics, the Jedi seem to not want to be involved, and whether that's by edict or by some kind of decree from the Republic, who's to say for sure? We never really get a lot of clarity on that. It's not like the Jedi follow some sort of prime directive or anything like that, where they can't interfere. Where it's not, I guess I should say, it's not overtly known if they can't necessarily interfere with a situation, which again is a little confusing because they can't get involved in these planets' political situations, but I mean they are sort of working at the behest of politicians in the Republic. So it's a sort of, and again, I personally find it to be one of the reasons why the Jedi were sort of doomed to fail with Sidious's plan. And if you go back to the old EU. Darth Plagueis is one of the ones who kind of got this ball rolling, and Sidious just picked it up from him and kind of kept it going because he's like, you know what? This is a good plan. I'm going to take this puppy over. But we'll talk about Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis another time. That's a whole different episode. Let's get back into the rebellion here. Let's check in on the Onderon rebels as they're feeling pretty good about themselves coming off the battle they just staged.
Your success will not go unnoticed.
I agree, but we need to be mindful of public perception. What was your observation, Padawan?
The people were fearful, Master.
Indeed. Judging from the reactions I saw today, I'm afraid they will mistake your intentions.
We need to do more damage. A few dozen broken down droids will do little to free Onderon.
The people need to believe we can succeed. Without their support, our efforts are meaningless.
If they're afraid, they won't support us. We need to assure them of our intentions.
I don't understand. Why are they afraid?
They're afraid we're not strong enough to win. We need to earn their trust.
You'll have plenty of time to earn their trust. All of you are going to be very busy.
Today was only a taste. You'll get your chance.
In the meantime, make the most of your victories, welcome and learn from them.
We talked a little bit about it in the prior episode about how Saw Gerrera is not quite ready to lead a rebellion just yet. I mean, and you heard it right there. In his mind, it's all about destroying more droids, the liberation itself. He's not really worried about getting the will of the people behind him. He's not worried about the politics, the optics of the situation. Steela, much more understanding that you have to win the hearts and the minds of the people. You can't just hand them a victory. You can't just hand them freedom. They have to support it. They have to want it. They have to earn it. And this episode is really about that very thing. And who's going to lead this rebellion to the heights that it needs to get to liberate Isis and Onderon itself from the droid army, from King Rash and the influence of Count Dooku. And it can't just be won by victory, by battles. You know what I mean? You need the support of the people. If not, then you are really just a terrorist, right? If the people are behind you, and you are reflecting the will of the people, then it's a rebellion. It is for the betterment of everyone, right? You're trying to overthrow an unjust, a corrupt government, a wrong government, and that what makes the rebellion legitimate, right? So this is something that Saw Gerrera is not quite capable of at this particular moment, and it's not something that he ever gets really good at. I mean, when we catch up with him years later in Rogue One, he's broken away from the rebellion against the Empire because he's not into playing that game. He wants to be in battles. He wants to be in direct conflict with the Empire. That's how he feels it's best to overthrow them, not by being in committees and councils and arguing about the best way to do things. So, Saw very much on brand at this early point in his career to where we will see him later in life as the toll of those battles, as he wears a toll of those battles on his body, scarred and broken down as we find him in Rogue One. So yeah, interesting stuff here. Let's check it back in with this scene here as the Jedi are basically preparing to turn over the rebellion to the Onderonians themselves, and Lux has an idea about maybe how best to go about winning over the will of the people by putting on a I guess going after a nice juicy target that might show more of what they're all about to the people.
Perhaps if we hit something big, give a show of strength, they will overcome their fear and join us.
Do you have something in mind?
I know the perfect target.
All right, so he knows the perfect target, but we're not going to find out what it is just yet. This is the Jedi. This is Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Rex leaving, and they're going to leave Ahsoka behind, if she's okay with it, to kind of observe the rebels and make sure everything kind of stays the course.
I think they're ready to give the 501 some competition.
Let's not get carried away, General. Though, these rebels have impressed me.
We will share the developments with the Jedi Council. Ahsoka will remain here as an advisor. Monitor them and report back with their progress.
Are you up for it, Snips? Or would you like to return to Coruscant?
No, Master. I want to stay.
Good. We shall continue to provide supplies and credits, but they must learn to operate on their own. Their survival depends on it.
Yes, Master.
Remember your purpose.
I like that last little moment from Anakin as he's reminding Ahsoka. He knows that she's sort of conflicted right now because of her feelings for Lux, and supporting him, being, at least at the very least a good friend by aiding him in this rebellion. But she knows what her role is as the Jedi there, and Anakin is aware of the sort of the way that her focus is sort of drifting a bit, and I like how he is aware of that, and it reminds her of her purpose in that very, very good scene. A very good, not even a scene, just like a nice little line from Anakin that he's understanding, and we'll get more of that understanding from Anakin later in the episode. So let's check back in with Lux Bonteri. Who else is there? Ahsoka's there, Saw's there, Steela's there. Let's find out what this big target is that Lux has in mind to win over the people.
This power generator feeds substations across the city. We hit that, the entire grid falls.
How does that help us? Battle droids are no longer linked to central control. They operate individually.
Yes, but they still need power to recharge. If we take out this facility, it will knock out the power grid. And then it will only be a matter of time until the droid army is brought to a standstill. Literally.
If you carry the plan out by nightfall, you'll maximize your strike capability.
Okay, so we just need to figure out how to destroy the power station.
We need to do more surveillance.
Those droids should have all the intel we need stored up in those tin cans of theirs, right?
They should.
Then I'll get us one.
And that's what Saw Gerrera does as he, goes down there. It's a nice little scene where he shows up down there, pops the head off of one of the B-1 battle droids, and takes it back to get some intel on how the security forces are arrayed around the power plant, basically. How do I put this necessarily? It's fortunate this plan sort of works the way that it does. And again, this plan will succeed. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched the episode yet. But one of the things I was sort of thinking about was like, okay, so you're prepared to cause a citywide blackout here in order to power down the droids and be able to destroy their forces more easily, as they will be incapable of fighting back and retaliating. But what I sort of wondered, again, you have a citywide blackout here. Like, I guess it's thank goodness that they didn't black out some hospital or something like that with a bunch of people like plugged in on life support or something like that, or some, major. I can't even. I guess a hospital is probably the biggest deal I can think of, right? But I guess it's just fortunate that you didn't lose the hearts and the minds of the people because they didn't have refrigeration for 12 hours and all their food spoiled. That would have upset me if all my ice cream was melted. I would have been bummed out, like, damn, rebels melting my ice cream. What the heck? So I guess it's sort of fortunate that that's not an issue in this episode. Just fortunate, I suppose, is the way I will leave that. So the plan after they get the head from the droid is, and they see what they have to do, they want to get a tank. They want to find a tank, and they want to be able to hijack it, repurpose it, and use its weapons against the shielded walls around the power plant, and then destroy the power plant with the tank as well. So that's what they're going to do now. We'll get a really nice action sequence from the Onderon rebels as they cause a distraction. They want to get the droids to call in for backup so they can bring in the tank. But they get to fight off some droidicas first. And again, it's just a nice little action sequence seeing these rebels hard at work and employing the skills that they've been taught by the Jedi and by Rex, and proving quite how capable they are. So let's, again, we're going to go through the battle a little bit here, but let's find our next clip to play and talk about that. Again, it's a really great action sequence. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. As we're seeing the rebels do their thing, Steela has a new way of, she hasn't quite mastered tossing those EMP type thermal detonators. Again, it's not a thermal detonator, but it's because it's an EMP charge to disable the droids. But she hasn't quite mastered that ability to toss them and get them past the shields. So she comes up with a way of doing it on her own, which is really neat to see. And then we have the actual hijacking of the tank, which again is another good sequence too, because again, you think Saw Gerrera is just, being Saw Gerrera, this ultimate soldier is going to be like super good at like hijacking a tank, but we find out that it's actually Stila who's really, really good at it. And Saw's not quite as good as he wants to think he is at it. And so it's because of her they're able to get the tank under control and deploy it against the shields and the power generator itself, which leads to another great action sequence as commando droids spring forth from the power plant. And you get a nice little battle there. A lot of action in about a 5-6 minute span. Really, really fun to see. Let's check in, though, as King Rash is seeing this destruction and trying to figure out if he can make it work to his benefit.
My lord, without power, the droids will be massacred.
This loss will work for us.
That is what he thinks. He's going to have a conversation with Dooku in a minute. We're going to play it. It's not going to go his way. That is for sure. One of the things I noticed to hear about King Rash in the episodes that we see him in, the guy spends a lot of time munching on things. Loves the snacky snacks. Always has some kind of Onderonian fruit with him he can't stop munching on. He throws one in a fire earlier in the episode. It's a whole thing with him. Loves those Onderonian fruit treats. All right, let's check out the rebels as they're now sweeping through the city, destroying battle droids. And I love the droids' reactions as they're figuring things out. Matthew Wood, as always, is great. So let's go ahead and hear some fun with some B-1 battle droids.
There's been a power outage. I've lost contact with command. Switch to infrared.
Yeah, they didn't switch to infrared nearly fast enough. They got mowed down pretty quickly. And the rebels are wearing like night vision goggles in this portion of the episode. Apparently, the city's like very, very dark, and the B1s aren't switching over to the infrared fast enough, and they're getting mowed down pretty quick, even before they're powered down. They're kind of useless here in this situation because apparently you can't switch to infrared until someone tells you to. But it's also at this point that the people of Onderon begin to see the rebels and what they're doing and responding to it favorably.
It's the rebels! Fight for Onderon!
Free Onderon!
And now we're going to see more droids get taken down. It's good stuff. It's a fun sequence as the rebels are getting the drop on these droids. So it's a really big turning point for the rebels because they're beginning to win the hearts and minds of the people. The people are getting excited. They're participating. They're helping. They're trying to destroy droids as well. I mean, it's really escalating the rebellion here again with the support of the people in it. Now we get back to the rebel base as they are in a celebratory sort of mood, and we'll hear from our Jedi Council advisors as well.
We must celebrate.
With pleasure.
Now, what you don't see it there because this is a podcast, but it's another moment where they're sort of misdirecting us, thinking there's some sort of love triangle between Saw, Stila, Lux, and that's probably from the perspective of Ahsoka, who thinks that way because we just saw pick up Stila, turn her around, show some affection. But again, this is where we are. We're finally going to get the reveal that Stila and Saw are brother and sister. It's not what Ahsoka thinks it is, and that's why Lux and Stila makes more sense, right? So they're playing this weird dynamic back and forth, and it's a little annoying to an extent, particularly at this point because Ahsoka is being very reserved from this. She kind of is stepping back from this situation and kind of watching it all unfold, and she's like, oh, so it's not this dynamic, it's actually this dynamic, particularly as Stila is going to go to Lux now and show affection towards him. And it's much more flirtatious than what she just saw with Saw. Because brother and sister, it's Star Wars. I mean, I guess brother and sister kissing is a normal thing. But no, just kidding. It's a joke. Calm down. Let's let it play out.
Come here, you handsome senator.
Ahsoka's jealous, though. No doubt.
Stila is a born leader. And quite courageous, I hear.
Ahsoka, remember what I told you about staying focused.
I can't help it, Master.
I understand.
You do?
I do. But try to remember, always put purpose ahead of your feelings.
This latest development will surely get Count Dooku's attention. He will respond harshly. They will stop at nothing to find you. You must adapt and continue to confront them in order to liberate Onderon.
We will.
And we shall win.
In that, I have no doubt.
Now you must rally the people. You will need their support. Your ability to influence them will also determine your capacity to represent them. Not only on the battlefield, but off of it. Against your enemies, even within your own ranks. Your commitment will inspire others. Your conviction will lead to victory.
After tonight's efforts, the people will be ready to follow. You will need a leader for them to rally behind.
Okay, so I pause right there because there's had a lot to get out of that. The conversation, the side conversation from the hologram of Anakin to Ahsoka is wonderful. It's so good. It's, he can, even as a hologram, Anakin senses his Padawan's feelings, the way she feels for Lux and what she's seen and how it's upsetting her and causing her to lose focus. And again, Anakin is the perfect person to understand these things. But we know that Anakin pursues these feelings at the same time. So in one sense, you have to wonder what Anakin's rooting for here. Is he like, yeah, I hope she follows her feelings and goes for this relationship because that's what I did, But it seems to be the opposite. Like he's telling her to do what he was supposed to have done, which is like kind of shut it down, stay focused, stay on task, stay on mission. So again, he's being supportive of her desire to be a Jedi. But it's again, it's sort of interesting just to kind of parse that out a little bit when you realize that Anakin's the one saying these things, and he is the last person probably to give out this sort of advice, right? Again, I love him being supportive of Ahsoka and keeping her on mission because, again, her desires seem to be a Jedi Knight, right? Not to leave the Order to fall in love or to have some kind of secret relationship the way Anakin did. But it's just very, very interesting that it's Anakin who's having her stay on task, keeping her focused and on point. Now we get to the conversation about leadership, and again, this is a great part of the episode too. I really like this, and Saw Gerrera seems like he's ready to step up and assume the mantle of leadership here for the Rebels, but it's not going to go that way. As was noted earlier in the conversation, Rex and Obi-Wan have already observed Astila as a great leader, and they're not the only ones.
They are waging.
But we'll get to that scene first. We have to check in now with King Rash having a conversation with Count Dooku that, again, Rash miscalculates this very, very badly.
A very public war. Every trespass is an embarrassment.
Your forces cannot manage a small band of terrorists.
My lord, your droids have become ineffective against the mounting rebel attacks.
I thought I could trust you to rule Onderon. I find this report most disappointing.
It seems that the rebels are far more organized than they were in the past. The attack against the power generators proves that. Perhaps it's time you send me better reinforcements than the droids I have.
I will grant you this request, and not only send you better droids, but a better general. This is Kalani. I assure you he will succeed where you have failed.
So Kalani's one of these, strategy droids, right? Like he's gonna computate battles, strategies, and all these good things. But he has a very interesting look. He's very different than what we've seen from the strategy droids in the past. He has almost sort of like a Venetian sort of design about him. The way he has like those etchings and carvings, well, maybe not carvings, but the interesting design work around him. It's sort of reminded me of sort of like a Venetian design, if you will, sort of like a masquerade kind of look. If you know what I'm talking about. like Carnival in Venice. That's the word I was trying to think of. It's like a masquerade, but it's they call it Carnival. Carnival. And I think to me, what do you all think? What do you recognize the designs from? What does it evoke in your minds when you see the design work on this droid? But yeah, there you go. There you have it. And again, Rash, I don't think is super stoked on this. This is not what he had in mind when he wanted to call in Dooku and be like, hey, Dukes, you got to send me some more droids and some reinforcements. Rash is terrible at this job, right? He's one of the worst installed kings that we've seen Dooku put on a throne. This guy is useless, beyond useless. I mean, he wants Dooku to do everything for him. He just wants to sit on his throne, eat fruit, and throw it into fireplaces. This guy stinks. He's terrible at this job, ill-suited for the role that Dooku has entrusted him with. And again, what Dooku says about how he finds this report disappointing. Love that. Love the way that line was delivered. It's so good. Let's go back and check in with the rebels as they're going to make a big decision about leadership here.
We need to build on our momentum and continue our attacks to keep them off balance.
We have to assure the people first. If we keep disrupting their lives, we risk alienating them. We have to gain their trust.
I agree with both of you. We can balance both. We also need to recruit others to join us. Onderon is ours. We will remind everyone, and keep reminding them, until we get it back.
All right, so clearly we know what's going to happen here. We saw Lux represent two different sides of the rebellion aspect, right? Saw the more militaristic, all about the battle, destroying droids, winning the liberation through through victory in the battlefield. Lux, a little bit more diplomatic, wants more of a democratic sort of victory, winning the people over, getting their support, ensuring their safety, and by ensuring their safety, you gain their support, right? And Steela obviously is the one who steps in and is like, you know what, we can do both of these things, and that's how we're going to win the day, by being, we're going to beat them on the battlefield, and we're going to beat them by reflecting the will of the people. And now is the time for her to step forward. She steps forward, and now the rest of the rebels are going to note that and make it official.
All in favor of Steela as our leader, raise your hand.
Okay. Looks like it's been decided. You're the leader.
Saw, a little disappointed.
Let him go. He just needs to blow off some steam. He'll be back.
I can't.
Why?
He's my brother.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. That was a really awkward way to reveal that. And I suspect it was more done for the audience's sake, but it's sort of a clunky reveal that they are, in fact, siblings. And again, they share a similar look. We all see it. But they wanted, again, I feel like there was sort of like this deception that there was like this kind of like four-way romance thing going on. Because like at points in the previous episode, Saw's flashing attention to Ahsoka, and probably picking up on the fact that she's upset that Lux is paying attention to Steela. There's a whole weird romance angle thing here that doesn't quite work for me on every, particularly in this episode, because the reveal of Steela and Saw as relations is, again, I'm just going to use the word clunky. It's sort of obvious, and the way it's handled, like, again, the way it's just sort of handled, the way it sort of plays out, I think they could have done a little bit of a better job sharing that information. But they wanted it to be some sort of like dramatic reveal. And that's sort of like the one element of this episode that really doesn't work for me. Even more so than the idea that like when they do that blackout, like there was no hospitals or anything like that caught in the crossfire that all of a sudden couldn't keep people on life support. But maybe Onderonians are just very, very healthy and they're not on life support. What do I know? So in the way that Ahsoka's like, why can't you just let him leave? Because we're related. Duh. Clunky. That's all I'm going to say. That's my only knock on the episode, really. But this one's not quite as good as the first episode, I think. Just a notch or two below. But, I'll put it at 7.5 buckets. 7.5 buckets, because there is really good action stuff. But, again, you sort of see the incompetence of King Rash, and you sort of wonder, like, how did this guy get appointed by Dooku? Dooku does not suffer fools. And this guy's a fool. He is a total fool, and deserves everything he has coming his way. And we'll see a lot of what's coming his way in the next episode of the Onderon arc. So yeah, there you have it. That is this week's show. Or well, at least today's show. There might be another one this week. We'll see how it goes. I wanted to remind everybody that we are on social media, so please give us a follow, like our posts. We truly appreciate that. It's so hard to. It's such a plethora of social media accounts and podcasts out there that are Star Wars geared, and we're trying to get as more people supporting, following, and your likes and shares and all that are critical to that. So we thank you in advance for all the support and everything you're doing to spread the word about the show. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Mando_Vision. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. We will probably read the emails on the show. So by all means, fire one off. Please make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. If you want to support the show by helping us defeat the algorithm, you can do that by giving us a sweet 5-star review. Those are the best. Totally helpful for small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle of those many other shows that exist on the internet. I think there should be a study done, because I feel like every 5th person in America has a podcast. I think the ratio is getting that bad. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good thing. The fact that so many people have a voice now and can put out, get their ideas and their thoughts and their feelings out about something that they're so passionate about is really wonderful, and is what inspired me to do all this too. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of us out there though. So the 5-star reviews are really helpful if you're a fan of the show. Old listeners, welcome back. New listeners, welcome aboard. Hope you're having fun. Hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. And you can influence the show, reach out, social media, the emails, all that stuff. Love to hear from you. Thank you. If you have a couple extra shekels and you want to be a Mandovision maniac, you can head over to patreon.com/Mandovision. You can join, get access to sweet bonus content, and hang out with super cool people like the Aspinall Chody, the Batman Abejo, Jeff Nail, Jeff co-hosts Ringing Ear, a great music podcast. Check them out. Thanks to Evil Circle, the evilest of all circles, the Squid Master General, Mr. Brian Broussard, the New Jersey Devil, Mark Wagemer, our very own Joker and Harley Quinn, Brian and Krista of Pariah Brewing, right here in San Diego and now Baltimore, Maryland. The Beer Hop Brigadier General, Jesus Beer Hops, the Silent Assassin, he who shall not be named, and Syndicate Ram, co-host of Come On, It's Still Good, a great movie podcast. Be sure to check them out. All right, we're going to be back so very soon. The Onderon arc continues. And as I mentioned in our first episode for this arc, if you get the chance, if you have access to like Marvel Unlimited or Comixology or whatever, try to find the old Tales of the Jedi comics. They all fall under the Marvel banner now. They were originally published by Dark Horse back in the day. But yeah, go check out the original Onderon arc in Tales of the Jedi. I think it's the first 5 issues or so, and not every single issue plugs into Onderon. I think it's like the first 3. But you meet the Beast Riders of Onderon. You learn about how the beasts from the one moon came to Onderon, because like every couple of 100 years or whatever, like their atmospheres would click with, and so they could cross over. It's wonderful. And again, you can look at it and kind of compare what you see in the art in those books to what you see in the episode of the show, and it's really fun, really nice. And it's just a delightful time. And I guess I'm sort of wondering too, if you do read it, hit me up. Let me know what you think of it, because if you're new to it, I'm very curious what you think of a Star Wars story that's almost 30 years old and is limited now to the extended universe, but was for me just this incredible sparking moment of like all that Star Wars could be. When you were unencumbered by the continuity, by the legacy of Skywalker, because you're going back thousands of years before we knew anything about the Jedi Order. Just a lot of fun. Check it out. I do recommend it very much. All right, I think that does it. I got nothing left to say, except this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I would like to see the baby.